Rent-A-Bomb is a car rental company that humbly originated at 129 Bridge Road, Richmond in 1979 with only 6 holdings. Through their appealing low prices and reliable service, Rent-A-Bomb has become a nationwide organisation with locations in cities including Sydney, Brisbane and Melbourne. Throughout this presentation, we will critically analyse Rent-A-Bomb's internal and external environment factors to determine a fitting business strategy that will ensure Rent-A-Bomb holds a competitive advantage against rivals. The objective of this analysis is to determine whether or not Rent-A-Bomb has a competitive advantage. A competitive advantage refers to an organisation being superior to its rivals through the ability to operate in a cost-efficient manner. Analysing whether or not Rent-A-Bomb has a competitive advantage is vital to allow the company to understand its position in the market, furthermore allowing them to identify any challenges that need to be addressed to.
So the internal analysis of any given company tends to focus on 3 fundamental facets: the company's resources, capabilities, and its core competency. These are in a sense the foundation of a competitive advantage for the firm. The relationship between the 3 work in tandem and are used to deduce whether a company has a competitive advantage or not. Resources are a source of a given firm's capabilities. It represents the inputs into a firm's production process. It can be broken down to a company's tangible and intangible resources. These in itself does not yield a competitive advantage or create value that results in above average returns on their own. So tangible resources can be observed and quantified. These are broken down into 4 categories: financial, organizational, physical, and technological resources. In the case of Rent-A-Bomb, its primary focus is on its physical resources. One of their main tangible resources is its fleet of vehicles that they have out for rent. The overarching focus is really on their product inventory. There have also been branches that have been set up in locations across Victoria, and these are also a form of tangible resource. These branches are quite strategically placed, being well connected to public transports. There are either trams or train stops near each branch, therefore remaining highly accessible and attractive. Now, the company also has a Tullamarine branch, which is right next to the airport, for the feasibility of incoming travelers requiring a cheap mode of transport to get into the city or get around the state. The buildings, physical branches, are direct tangible resources that the company has at their disposal. Intangible resources cannot be observed or quantified. They are difficult for competitors to analyze and imitate, and this would pose as an advantage to the firm. It's a superior source of capabilities and subsequently core competencies. These are broken down into 3 categories: human, innovation, and reputational resources. With Rent-A-Bomb, the company has its own set of specialized technicians who service the cars on a routinely basis so that their cars may be subject to a full safety check before being used. The firm's organizational routines and knowledge pertaining to vehicle servicing are both employed as part of human resources within the company. There is a degree of trust and skill that is predicated on the employees in conducting their work by maintaining a proper check of the vehicle before it is leased out. Employees of the company also need to they need to have an overall knowledge of the cars on rent in order to successfully execute their business. Without much collaboration with each other within the company, it would remain futile to bring about workers in all branches to execute the business. Rent-A-Bomb also plays heavily on Australian lingo. The term bomb means old, second, and shabby in the local language, which plays well with the local crowd. Now, this indicates that the company provides cheaper second-hand cars. That in itself is somewhat of a brand name for the company. So the company is known for being a cheap rental shop. They charge about a third and a half of the cost of cars being rented from big players such as Europcar, Hertz, and Avis. They uphold their reputation as a cheap rental option and thus leverages on its reputational resources. So the concept of a brand name and perception of the product quality plays in tandem with the cheap rentals they have to offer. The firm combines its individual tangible and intangible resources. This culminates in the foundation of its core competencies. It's collectively used to complete the organizational tasks required to produce, distribute, and service the goods and services of the firm, thus creating overall value for the product. Capabilities refers to activities that a firm tends to perform much better in relation to its rivals. This stems from the employee's unique skills, knowledge, and functional expertise. It is often developed in specific functional areas. This includes distribution, human resources, managing information systems, marketing, management, manufacturing, and research and development. Now, given the aggressiveness of the car rental market with big players such as Avis, Hertz, and Europcar, it is cumbersome for a company like Rent-A-Bomb to compete in the industry, as the former would have developed much more of such capabilities. International companies such as Hertz and Europcar have an extensive fleet of cars at their disposal and would be of a much higher quality, which customers, especially international tourists, would be willing to pay more for. Provided that these big players are recognized globally and not just in Australia, where Rent-A-Bomb's operations curtails, they are able to carry much more clout in the effectiveness of their capabilities. Capabilities would be extensive, covering all functional areas. Due to providing a service, Rent-A-Bomb's capabilities would simply cover some distribution, human resources, management information systems, marketing, and management. However, their operations are still relatively small in comparison to many of the international players. Such capabilities will be overshadowed by the high brand loyalty and size, along with the global name of the likes of Europcar and Hertz. Much of these capabilities in their operations will be conducted at a much more efficient level at these international players given their large customer base. Therefore, Rent-A-Bomb's current capabilities does not remain a sustainable long-term solution to coexist in the aggressive nature of the industry. Now, capabilities that tend to serve as a source of competitive advantage for a firm over its rivals are known as core competencies. Due to a particular or group of capabilities that a firm might have, it dials in as a direct source of competitive advantage when used properly, and that leads to it being an overall core competency. So it generally tends to distinguish the firm competitively from its competitors in the market to give it a unique identity. It tends to emerge over time through an organizational process of accumulating and learning how to deploy different resources and capabilities, more importantly, in the most optimal manner. It is also important to note that every core competency is a capability, but not all capabilities are core competencies. We'll be looking at the resource-based view approach. Now, according to this view, capabilities must meet 4 criteria in order to be considered a core competency of a company, and in turn a potential source of competitive advantage. They must be valuable, rare, costly to imitate, and non-substitutable. In terms of value, there's not much Rent-A-Bomb's capabilities are able to do to leverage much from, as there are already a few big players in the market that are also better able to capitalize on their respective capabilities to create value for their customers. Now, moving on, Rent-A-Bomb also does not have any rare capabilities. All the capabilities employed by the firm are already well established in other firms in the car rental market. In terms of its cheap rental options and low-cost strategy, this remains a unique culture of Rent-A-Bomb. Therefore, it is casually ambiguous. However, other capabilities that the company possesses can be easily developed by any of the global car rental companies. Facets such as distribution, human resources, management of information systems, marketing, and management would be conducted in a much more efficient manner in large and global companies, such as Europcar, Hertz, and Avis. Its capabilities are also very substitutable. Any other company can come by and set up a business that is predicated on renting out cheap cars. The company does not have much intangible resources that it may turn towards in order to remain non-substitutable either. So Rent-A-Bomb does have tangible resources and intangible resources at hand. However, this does not translate completely to effective capabilities that may be leveraged on by the company itself in order to gain an overall competitive advantage in the aggressive car rental market. Many of the big players in the industry are far better able to make use of such capabilities in a more efficient level due to their sheer size and global presence. It turns out that the performance implications as a result of the resource-based view approach would culminate in below-average returns, as it does not have any real core competency to ensure that the company looks and compete.
Now that we have assessed the internal environment, it's time to address the external environment. Competition is an inevitable component of business. As such, it is imperative that businesses address the external environment in which they operate. To successfully do this, a business must use Porter's 5 forces to critically analyze their industry's underlying structure. These 5 forces include the threat of new entrants, the bargaining power of suppliers and buyers, the threat of substitutes, and rivalry among existing competitors. Now that we can evaluate the external environment, we need to identify the industry in which we operate. Based on our case study, we have concluded that Rent-A-Bomb operates within the Australian car rental industry. When considering the Australian car rental industry, Thomas deems the barriers to entry to be moderate. Thomas defends this statement by declaring that while the practical elements of entering the Australian car rental industry appear relatively easy, there are other factors that need to be considered. He states that the high level of market share concentration combined with the high costs associated with becoming a competitive business has raised the barriers to entry. Thus, there is a low threat of entry due to the major deterrents that new entrants face, such as acquiring a large fleet, the expensive marketing and advertising, as well as the competition over market share with already well-established businesses. Rent-A-Bomb's main suppliers for their cars include Toyota, Holden, Ford, Mitsubishi, Hyundai, and Kia. As such, it can be confidently said that these suppliers have a significant amount of bargaining power due to the fact that they are well-established international car manufacturers. Additionally, they do not directly depend on the Australian car rental industry for its revenues, thus allowing them to have more influence. What is more is that their power stems from the fact that there is a limited amount of suppliers within the car manufacturing industry, thus giving suppliers more power due to businesses having limited options for potential supply. The bargaining power for buyers within the Australian car rental industry is high. One of the main reasons for this includes the fact that the underlying product/service that each of these businesses provides is fundamentally identical. As such, consumers enjoy low switching costs. In addition to this, consumers also have many businesses to choose from, and thus have bargaining power through the multitude of options available to them. There is a high threat of a substitute within the Australian car rental industry. This is due to the sheer amount of substitutes that are currently available as seen on the screen. What is more is that most of these substitutes offer an attractive price-performance trade-off, predominantly due to their low switch costs, reliability, and ease of access, making them attractive alternatives. Consequently, this is providing businesses pressure to compete with price and value offering. Thomas states that there are currently 998 businesses within the industry, with the main players all sharing large amounts of market share, these players being Hertz, Avis, and Europcar. Ultimately, this market share concentration makes rivalry between businesses exceptionally intense. In addition to this, new websites that allow consumers to compare multiple different vendors at once are significantly increasing the rivalry between businesses. To conclude, the low threat of new entrants combined with high supply and consumer bargaining power, high threat of substitutes, and high rivalry among existing competitors indicates that the Australian car rental industry is currently relatively unattractive. Now that we have assessed the broader environment, we get to look at Rent-A-Bomb's immediate competitors. When evaluating Rent-A-Bomb's main competitors, it is important that we first compile a list of criteria to assess from. Based on the Australian car rental industry, Thomas states that the key success factors for businesses include their ability to control stock on hand, easy access for clients, companies having low running costs, and having a loyal customer base. From these key success factors, I have narrowed down the two most important to be easy access for clients and the company's products having low running costs. As such, these elements will correlate with the Y and X axis on the strategic group map. The diagram being depicted on the screen shows the strategic group map of Rent-A-Bomb's competitors. Hertz, the pink circle, represents 26.7% of the market share and has 261 Australian locations. As such, they are the easiest business for clients to access and consequently have the highest running costs. Avis, the purple circle, represents 25.6% of the market share and have 169 Australian locations. As such, they are comparable to Hertz in regards to ease of access and running costs. Europcar, the blue circle, represents 14% of the market share and has 113 Australian locations. As such, they have one of the lowest running costs, yet they are not as easy to access. Rent-A-Bomb, the green circle, represents 12 Australian locations, and as such, they have the lowest running costs, yet they are not as easy to access.
A competitive strategy is a management plan on how to successfully compete within a market. Porter's model outlines 5 strategies firms use in positioning themselves within a market. Rent-A-Bomb employs a low-cost provider strategy, which is aimed towards a broad market with the intention to achieve lower overall costs than competitors. Rent-A-Bomb's strategy is to use a lower cost edge to price their car rentals below competitors and attract buyers that are price sensitive. Rent-A-Bomb uses new and second-hand vehicles to rent out to people, which they ensure are roadworthy and reliable to drive before allowing customers to rent them. This allows them to reduce their costs in providing their service, as they are able to spend less than purchasing a full fleet of new cars like other large competitors, such as Hertz. Rent-A-Bomb is then able to pass on these cost savings to customers. This fits with a low-cost provider strategy, as the company has implemented cost savings in their production in order to provide a cheaper service to customers than other competitors in the market. This strategy is most successful when a number of market characteristics are present. Firstly, that price competition is vigorous among different companies. An industry report from IBISWorld shows that price comparison websites have allowed consumers to compare rental prices among different brands, which has increased the competition the industry faces. Secondly, it's more likely for a low-cost provider to be successful when the products offered by rivals are essentially identical. As a car rental service, while some specific types of cars may differ, often buyers don't look for a specific make and model, and instead are looking for reliability or comfort or space, depending on what their needs are for. In this industry, there are not many ways to achieve product differentiation, which provides more value to buyers. In the car rental industry, main competitors like Hertz have a balance between quality car offerings and low rental prices. Customers are willing to pay slightly more for rentals that are newer, have more features inside, or look better. Rent-A-Bomb therefore risks driving away some customers who are less price sensitive, and customers will go to other large competitors. Also, buyers use the product in the same way. As someone looking to hire a car, all are looking to use it to travel from A to B. While some little requirements may differ, the main purpose is the same. Rent-A-Bomb therefore risks driving away some customers who are less price sensitive, and customers will go to other large competitors. Also, buyers use the product in the same way. As someone looking to hire a car, all are looking to use it to travel from A to B. While some little requirements may differ, the main purpose is the same. Overall, there are a number of factors that will negatively affect Rent-A-Bomb's ability to compete in this industry. One of the biggest factors is the high competition they face in big names like Hertz or Europcar. As we've already outlined, these competitors have the resources to implement cost-cutting methods in production and develop new technology, which allows them to compete on price in the long run.
Through our analysis, we have determined that within Rent-A-Bomb's internal environment, they have certain tangible and intangible resources that are unable to be developed into capabilities, thus creating difficulties in gaining a competitive advantage. Furthermore, as previously mentioned, Rent-A-Bomb's external environment showed that there is currently a low threat to new entrants, high supplier bargaining power, high buyer bargaining power, high threat of substitutes, and high rivalry amongst current competitors. Based on this, the Australian car rental industry is relatively unattractive. Moreover, Rent-A-Bomb utilises a low-cost provider strategy to price their car rental service significantly lower than their competitors to attract consumers and succeed in a market that is crowded with big league rivals. Thus, through the examination of Rent-A-Bomb, we can conclude that due to their lack of public information about their company, it is difficult to find hard evidence to determine strong core competencies and capabilities. This can be further proved through their lack of advertising to show the public why they're a better option compared to other car rentals. Therefore, due to their little to no evidence of capabilities which is unsustainable, we can determine that they do not have a competitive advantage in the market and will remain a small business that is unable to compete at the same level as advanced competitors. Thank you for listening.